views, or even an insult. In The Catcher in the Rye by Jerome David Salinger, growing up becomes one of the novel's central and most important themes. Rather than presenting maturity as a positive experience, Salinger uses Holden Caulfield's experience to show growing up as something painful, superficial, and traumatic. Holden believes that part of adulthood means losing one's innocence, and much of the novel supports his fear. Although he is desperate to appear mature, his choices are childish in motivation, yet adult in consequence. Traumatic events have forced him to grow up too quickly, leaving him in a limbo between childhood and adulthood, becoming a boy wearing a man's costume. As Holden ages, he witnesses and has to go through two deaths. When Holden was just 13, his younger brother, Ali Caulfield, died of leukemia. He struggled to cope, isolating himself alone in the garage and breaking all of the windows. I was only 13, and they were going to have me psychoanalyzed and all, because I broke all of the windows in the garage. Losing his brother at such a young age robbed Holden of much of his innocence. A second traumatic event is James Castle's demise after being bullied. He was dead, and his teeth and blood were all over the place. Holden's vivid memories of these deaths show how early exposure to grief and cruelty force him to grow up too quickly, strengthening the novel's theme of adulthood as painful and damaging. At Pensy Prep, a prestigious boarding school, Holden is shown failing 4 of his 5 classes, only passing English. While this doesn't tell much, it reveals a significant part of his personality and his beliefs. His English composition about Ali Caulfield's baseball glove becomes the only place where he can express his emotions honestly. As he describes it, "My brother Ali had this left-handed fielder's mitt. He had poems written all over the fingers and the pockets and everywhere." Although Holden is at an age where feelings go stronger, he hides them behind sarcasm and a false sense of maturity. His refusal to confront his grief displays how confused he is about what growing up really means. At a hotel, Holden spends $5 on a prostitute named Sunny while staying there, but he does not go through with doing the deed with her. When Sunny says, "Like fun you are," to Holden saying his age, me, 22, he shows his discomfort with adult interactions. He views this situation as childish and struggles to reconcile it with adult expectations. Later, when confronted by Maurice, Holden fantasizes about escaping like an action movie protagonist. "I sort of started pretending I had a bullet in my guts. I picture myself coming out of the goddamn bathroom, dressed and all, with my automatic in my pocket." These events illustrate how Holden is forced into adult situations he is unprepared for, and retreats into imagination instead of action. This proves the novel's theme that growing up is intimidating, hard, and often painful. Later, seeking guidance from someone older, Holden calls Carl Luce, a former classmate of his who is more experienced and smart. While very drunk, his intoxicated state causes him to revert to a more immature teenage behavior, which frustrates Carl. "Very funny, same as Caulfield. When are you going to grow up? And naturally, your mind is immature." Holden admits, "It is. It really is. I know it." Even in this drunk and unsteady state, he recognizes his own immaturity, showing a glimpse of self-awareness. Holden is confronted with the pressures and expectations of adulthood, yet his emotional and social immaturity leaves him inexperienced, highlighting the discomfort and resistance that accompany the transition from childhood to maturity. Holden's deep fear of growing up ultimately shapes how he sees the world, as the novel's title itself is a powerful metaphor for this fear. Holden imagines himself as the catcher in the rye, standing in a field of children and catching them all before they all fell off a cliff into adulthood. As he explains, "I keep picturing all of these little kids playing some game in this big field of rye, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to go out and catch everybody if they start to go over the cliff. This image reveals that what Holden really wants is to protect innocence, not just in others, but also in himself. While Holden clearly views growing up as something negative and threatening, he also secretly wants to skip the painful parts of life and move directly into the good parts. He doesn't want to understand why he has to endure the struggles of school, the neglect he feels from the adults, or the deaths of people he loves. Instead of confronting these challenges, he tries to avoid them altogether, sticking to fantasies and running away from the very experiences that shape growth in oneself. By running away from responsibility, refusing emotional honesty, and trying to stop others from maturing, Holden reveals the deepest part of his fear. Not just that growing up is negative, but that it is so painful and confusing that he would rather avoid it entirely. In the end, Salinger doesn't just show that growing up is difficult, he shows how fear of it can change a person's understanding of themselves and others. Holden's struggle displays that avoiding the hard parts in life doesn't make them disappear, it only makes the transition to adulthood even more confusing and painful.